As the story of Abram and Sarai continues, we have a kind of an unusual incident in chapter 16 of the book of Genesis. The wife of Abram, Sarai, is a little bit discouraged at this point because she doesn't have any children. And God has promised many descendants, and Abram was discouraged by it. And I guess Sarai said, we've got to do something here. You've got to have some children because God has made you a promise about your descendants. So Sarai comes up with a plan. She has a maidservant who's named Hagar. And she thinks about it and says, you know what? What could happen here is, Abram, if you have intercourse with Hagar, you might have some children and some descendants, and that could work out pretty well. So Abram says, well, Sarai, if you think that's a good idea, he kind of goes along with it and says, okay, we'll do it. So he has intercourse with Hagar, and lo and behold, Hagar becomes pregnant. When she becomes pregnant, she's like a little bit upset with Sarai, and she's kind of lording it over with her and says, I'm pregnant, you're not, and that type of interaction. And Sarai gets upset with that. And she goes to Abram and says, Abram, look what's happening here. I thought this thing would work out well, but Hagar's pregnant and she's, kind of taking it out on me and she's upset with me. And, I don't like this situation. Abram's sort of caught in the middle between Hagar and Sarai. So he says, hey, Sarai, you're my wife. Whatever you think you should do, you should do. So Sarai says, I'm going to just get rid of him. So she throws Hagar out, says, get out of here. Hagar takes off and she's all upset, and then she goes by herself and she's all discouraged. But in this difficult situation, God actually comes to Hagar, speaks about a messenger that comes and speaks, but later on we find out that this messenger is really God. God says, Hagar, don't worry. You are going to have many descendants. Go back. It's going to work out. It's going to be fine. And Hagar is like, wow, couldn't believe that God would come and speak with her. And she would actually have a vision of God. And God would be for her. And God would want to help her. I mean, she's thinking, Abram and Sarai, and they're the master and the mistress, and I'm just the servant. But it shows God's concern for everyone, even those who we would say are servants. God has a love, a concern for them. And God is concerned about Hagar and about this child, and makes her a promise that this child will have many descendants. And God even says, you're going to name this child Ishmael. Wow. So God even gives Hagar the name of the child. And Ishmael means, in Hebrew, it means God has heard. So when Hagar was upset, when Hagar was in distress, God heard, and God came to her, and God helped her and assisted her. And so Hagar names God and says, you are the God of vision, because she had this vision, this encounter with God. And so many times in the scriptures we see that you can't really see God and live. But with Hagar, she really has this vision of God because God has a special concern for her and for her child, even giving her the name Ishmael. God has heard for her child. And Hagar bore the son, Ishmael, and at that time, Abram was 86 years old. So he's older at this time. And again, it's hard to tell if these ages that the Bible mentions, it mentions 86, how accurate these ages might be and what they describe, because Sometimes they're not maybe equivalent to what we would say 86 would be today, but certainly Abram was older at this point. Now, what does this story kind of teach us today? I think one of the things we have to reflect on is impatience. You know, we get we're impatient with God's plan. I mean, God says, this is going to happen now, and this is going to, and we're like, oh, wait a minute, it's not happening. You said we were going to have many descendants. I don't even have one child here, God, and so what we tend to do sometimes, unfortunately, is we tend to come up with our own plans and our own ideas, and we kind of want to do things our way. And then we see in this story how Sarai objects to her own plan. I mean, it was her own plan to have Abram have intercourse with Hagar and possibility of having a child. And when the plan is executed and when the plan actually happens, who gets upset? Sarai gets upset. She loses it. She just wants Hagar out of there, and she doesn't like the situation, and she's all upset because she feels now that Hagar is pregnant. She's abusing Sarai about this, and so she wants to kind of end it all. It shows us our human actions, our humanness, our tendency to get upset with things, our tendency to lose our cool, and really even sometimes about our own plans that we propose, and then we don't like the way our plan works out. And I think it also shows the importance of God coming to us. And we know, of course, God comes to us in prayer as we open our hearts, our minds, our souls to God. So God comes to us in prayer, and God really hears us. So Ishmael, we have the Ishmael experience, which is the experience of God both listening to us, hearing us, and helping us. And so in chapter 16, we learn, I think, the importance of being patient, but also the importance of really, in a genuine way, listening to God. And as we know, the first one who said yes to God in the Bible was Father Abraham. And Father Abraham has many friends. Many friends has Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord.